All right. So today I'm here with my good friend Tara, and Tara is going to share some of her experiences with how she shifted from pretty much having her emotions or negative emotions overwhelm her or rule her life to shifting to a place where she is able to not only manage them, but things that she used to almost embrace them. Is that right, Tara? Is that
Yeah, yeah.
that's pretty spot on?
hmm
So, from your experience, I mean, what sorts of things did you used to? What kind of things used to happen with you where you felt like you needed something to shift you or to change you, or you needed assistance, or you needed to figure out how to manage these emotions better? Like, what was it? One instance for you, or was it a number of instances, or a pattern you began seeing in your life? So, tell me a little bit about that.
Okay. I was seeing a pattern because I was having a problem with anxiety and feeling really down. And I wasn't doing enough things. I just felt like I was getting so distracted by the anxiety and feeling so sad and jealous of other people's lives that I would spend all this time sitting around dwelling on that and not acting. And it was manifesting itself, I think, in me being really temperamental. So I'd get really easily irritated by things. Like I'd be sitting on the train on the way to the office and someone would be chatting on the phone, just minding their own business. And I would look at it as almost like a personal slight.
Mm.
Oh, this person's so irritating. You're just setting me off, because I had all of these emotions that I wasn't managing properly, overwhelming me all the time. So in March, when I went to visit family, I ended up getting into an argument with a family member who made this really innocent comment about how my shoes looked silly. The way I was wearing shoes with my pants looked silly.
Hmm.
And I just started screaming and throwing things. And almost immediately after I had this outburst, I thought, why did I act that way? I need to get to a place where I don't have these emotions controlling my behavior so much. So I started looking into a way that I could control myself. That was the original goal, to control myself better. I didn't know how I was going to get there,
Hmm.
but I started seeing a new therapist who introduced me to acceptance and commitment therapy, which is what I use now, and it's working really well for me.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit what that is? Because I'm not too familiar with it. So basically, it was you were just reacting to things, is what you're saying. You were reacting to things that were small, like you said. Somebody's just commenting on your shoes or making a comment that you take personally, and then you blow it at a proportion, and it just kind of overwhelms your world, whether you can't focus on anything else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about this this method that you tried or that you've been using.
Okay, so it has a lot to do with engaging the observing self.
Hmm.
So the simple way I like to put it to people is that you're supposed to pretend you're a scientist. So I'll use the rage outburst as an example. If I was getting really angry about something, like after I had that whole outburst with my family member, and we talked about how I should probably get into therapy again because there's a better way I could be managing this stuff. I spilled something all over the kitchen counter. And instead of having my typical outburst over something really small and silly, I was observing how that moment was making me feel in real time. So I was like, I'm getting a rapid heartbeat. I can feel myself getting the urge to curse and yell and throw things. Interesting. Interesting how something like this gives me this physical reaction. And it was like, I know you know full well, you talk about emotions as sensations in the body and how they happen for a reason, and
Hmm.
they don't have to be seen as the enemy. So if I'm just observing this physical sensation, for me, if I get really irritated, it feels like almost a burning, very mild burning sensation that's rising in my stomach and chest. So if I'm just concentrating on that, I'm not giving myself the space to get overwhelmed by those emotions and have that outburst. So it's been really helpful. It's like by the time I'm done making all of these observations, as if the anger or the sadness is an object, it's not that I make it magically disappear. It's just kind of pushed to a place where I can live my life and not get so wrapped up in these emotions.
So it's shifting perspective on it a little bit, like your
Totally.
perception of it. And I know
Absolutely.
it's, yeah, I mean, it's hard because I feel like so many people are disconnected from their emotions. So,
Yeah.
or they view them, like you said, as negative, where they just want to push them away instead of taking a step back, observing what that emotion is, and actually feeling it in your body. Like, where am I feeling? Like for you, it's this rising, burning sensation, right? So it's, where am I in my body? Am I feeling this sensation? And, you know, a lot of people, they, the minute, you know, and I've done this too, where you feel something coming on right away, it's like you go right straight into your head, right into your brain instead of your body.
Exactly.
And instead of letting it course through your body, you're right away in your head trying to push it away. And then that's when it just envelops you, envelops your whole being, and then you can't make decisions properly. You know,
You're absolutely right.
you have, you know, less clarity of thought and all that kind of thing. So that's awesome that you are able to use that first step and become the observer instead of just becoming the zombie where you're just letting it, like, stuff come at you, but you're not really conscious of it.
Right. It's like you had discussed that in depth before, right? Like becoming a zombie, you get so wrapped up in how other people are living, or you feel like you have a routine and you're used to feeling and doing a certain way, and that's how it's going to stay. But I mean, it's, for me, I think a lot of my feeling of being stuck also had to do with a fear of change. So I would get into these vicious cycles, and I would have an emotion and a thought. So let's say I was feeling really let down because I had a sense of rejection at work. And then that emotion would cause these thoughts like, oh, you're never going to be good at anything. Your career is never going to go anywhere.
Spiral, right?
Sure, yeah. I get so caught up in that, and it's distracting me from doing things that would bring more meaning to my life. If you look at the thoughts and feelings more like objects, they're things that can't control you or hurt you. They're just these images or objects floating, and they can peacefully coexist with you, and you can still get out there and live your life. But it also, if I'm caught up in so much of this negativity, like, oh, well, I'll never get any more skilled than I am now, or people won't like me as much as I ever want them to, blah, blah, blah. It brings about this really huge fear of change. Because if you have such a low opinion of yourself, then why would you want to do anything innovative or adventurous? That's just too scary.
It's going outside the comfort zone. Absolutely.
Right. But one thing that was really interesting to me that I learned through ACT is that so much of this has to do with the body's natural reaction. It's just the way human beings evolved. So one thing that I was learning about recently is there's this, you could look at it as like a medical condition where the body is just naturally resistant to change. And I did an exercise where I was asked to have my hands folded. And my therapist pointed out that when I'm folding my hands, probably the thumb that's resting on the top is the one that I always rest on top. And she said, well, move your top thumb to the bottom and let me know what you're feeling. And when I did it, it's not that it felt bad. I wasn't panicking about it. It just feels unnatural.
Yeah.
And I have this automatic urge to change it to the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And something so minor, like the way you fold your hands, is something that can bring about this like, chemical reaction in your body. So thinking about stuff like trying to cultivate a relationship, or trying to take another career path, something like that, would be hugely impactful on the body. And looking at it as something that should be observed and not succumb to could make a huge difference.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, if you spent, 38 years crossing your hands that particular way, right? And then
Right.
suddenly, it's like eating dinner with your non-dominant hand. It feels really off. Like you said, it doesn't feel bad, but it feels uncomfortable, or feels kind of like icky in a way.
Yeah.
So it's like your brain is just, the patterning in your brain is just, that's what it wants to do. So to just
Yeah.
suddenly want to change that, your brain doesn't want you to, your subconscious doesn't want you to. You're always going to want to, it's going to always try to pull you back. It's always going to try to revert you back to how things have always been, because that's the story that's always been playing in your mind. So when you talk about going outside your comfort zone, or doing like a big career change, or some kind of big shift, then that is huge. And that's why it's very hard to do, because
Right.
just the story to your brain just keeps going, keeps telling itself the same story over and over again. So, it's like smoking or any kind of addiction too, or eating, just these patterns that we have. That's why a lot of people diet, something like dieting or something doesn't work, because you're just trying to force the body, or trying to force yourself into somewhere it doesn't want to be. So you have to learn how to shift, actually, or create new circuits in your brain, and actually create new pathways, so that it becomes easier and easier and easier over time. It's what, it takes how many days to form a new habit? At least 21 days or something like that.
Yeah.
That's why it's hard, because you're always going to be pulled back in that direction.
Right.
Whether you like it or not. I mean, it's almost like you don't have control in a sense. So you have
Totally.
to shift the perception and shift the thinking, and actually create new patterns of thinking.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you're going against you're dealing with human nature,
Yeah,
right?
going against the
So,
grain. Absolutely.
yeah. So it's a tall order, but can be done,
Yeah.
clearly.
So you learn to observe, and then you notice that right away it was working for you as soon as you made that little shift in just your perception.
Yes. Yeah. And
Awesome.
I think I still have a lot of work to do with the anxiety. I had an anxiety attack a couple of weeks ago, and I was starting to work on the whole observational thing. But, it takes practice when something is that intense.
Mm-hmm.
If you're feeling a lot of anxiety, it's overwhelming you, you're certainly familiar with this, the breathing exercises, right? So you do the mindful breathing, and as you're breathing, you're imagining the air moving around the feeling of anxiety in your body, and what is the shape of it? Think about whether it's opaque or clear. Does it have jagged edges or smooth? So it's that whole process that if you're getting so involved in playing scientist, then you don't have the anxiety getting as much power over you, because you're channeling that energy into the observing self. So
yeah. You're placing your attention in a different area. I read a book a while ago about anxiety, and it was interesting. It was funny, because one of the methods in the book was to almost view the anxiety as like a little cartoon character. A little cartoon character, and kind of make it into something that's not so scary. For a lot of people, they think of anxiety as this big, like, evil monster, but to view it instead as something like this little cartoon character that makes you laugh, that kind of shows up every now and again, and you kind of like learn to make friends with it and stuff like that. So I thought that was a really good technique to kind of lower the importance on feeling anxiety.
Oh, totally. That's
And it's similar to what you're doing. You're just placing your attention, or you're putting your perception of it, you're just shifting it in a different way.
right. It's right in line with what the goal of these techniques are. It's just like you described. It's taking these things that you see as so powerful and detrimental and making them not so scary, something that you can pretty easily coexist with, because there was a whole issue with the compounded emotion. So I know a problem for me is, okay, I'm feeling a lot of sadness or I'm feeling anxiety. Something that I know is contributing to it growing and continuing to control me is I have this automatic, well, this is something that's supposed to be fixed. This is something that's not supposed to be a part of my system at all.
Yeah.
I'm so extra panicky now because I'm using these techniques that I learned before, like, oh, I meditated or I zoned out in front of a movie and I'm still feeling overwhelmed. There's something wrong with me. It's almost like if I fell down and I, kind of similar sensation to if I fell down and I realized there was a huge cut in my leg and I was bleeding all over the place. That's a physical injury that needs to be fixed and gone away. Anxiety and sadness they're not bad emotions. They're just something that should have less power. And then they become like the cartoon character, right? Like, oh, there they are again. Okay, well, the cartoon character is wearing a pink hat today, or dancing around today, right? And then you just live together and you realize that these aren't things that have to ruin your life and keep you from acting, because acting is totally separate from what you're thinking and feeling. It's like, oh, I'm super anxious, therefore I can't do ABC. I have to hide away.
Right.
It's just two totally different worlds, and the feelings and thoughts are just, they're sensations and stories.
Yeah, and it's interesting you brought up the point about how, anxiety is looked at, there's something wrong with you. Sadness is looked at, there's something wrong with you. Because I think especially in, society, I mean, there's so many people on medications and stuff like that. And it's kind of like the fitness industry too. They basically want you to feel bad about yourself, and we constantly feel like we need to be fixed. That if we can't have anxiety, like you said, we can't be depressed, all these things, that it puts us in a category, So if we have a lot of anxiety, it's like, I can't be a normal person. I can't be a normal person. I'm not a normal person. Therefore, every time the anxiety comes, I want to push it away because it's not normal,
Right.
So it just creates this idea in our heads, just our view of normal human emotion as something we shouldn't have. And then it just, I don't know, we give ourselves a complex. And then I think that's where the anxiety just grows and grows, because we're constantly resisting it rather than embracing it or taking it a step back and observing it for what it is and getting to the root. Okay, why am I feeling anxious? Instead of saying, I'm feeling anxious, oh my God, like I need it to stop right now.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a hard thing because so many people do have these emotions and feelings. Therefore, so many people feel like outcasts. You know what I mean? Feel like they can't be living a normal life. And that's creating so much disconnect inside themselves. Because it's like, I'm feeling this, but I shouldn't be feeling this.
Right. And
so what am I going to do? I'm going to take medication or something like an easy fix, because that's going to help me right away, rather than taking the time to get to know yourself, get to know your own body. Right? Which would help more in the long run, I think.
Yeah, I
putting
agree.
a Band-Aid on it all the time.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, I understand there are some people that have such a chemical issue that
Oh,
medication does do real help for them.
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But I mean, I know what you're talking about is the whole, okay, well, I'm Tara or I'm Jen. We're functioning the way we are. We go to the doctor, we say, oh, I've been feeling some depression or anxiety. And the first thing that comes up in the conversation is, well, do you want this prescription? That, I don't think that should be the case. You know,
Yeah.
it's just an over medicated society. And then people are taught, I think, that if they're on a medication and they're still having this very natural feeling, maybe it's not as intense because they're on the medication, but it's just natural and totally normal to feel certain ways. But if they're not happy all the time, they think, oh, okay, well, I probably just need more milligrams of this.
Mm.
And it's like you're saying, doctors keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And it's like the whole beach ball under the pool surface thing. Like, you have an emotion, push it under the water because, like, this is not right. This shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And the beach ball comes right back up because that's just being human.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not against medication, don't get me wrong.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
there are certain people who just can't function at all. And it's
Mhm.
just like they just, they can't live a normal life unless,
Right.
medication really helps a lot of people.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is just the mindset where it's like, you're completely broken. You're completely
Mhm.
broken, and then, like you said, people who just say, oh, well, maybe I just need to up my medication or something like that, the extreme. So I think there's so many different levels to it. It really depends on the person because everybody is different in how they're handling their emotions. But if there's, there are chemical imbalances, obviously, and things like that where medication might be needed, absolutely.
Yeah, but what you were saying is like somebody who doesn't have that,
But I
right?
think just blanketing it
Yeah.
for all anxiety, all depression, and I think that's what gets marketed a lot of
Mhm.
times.
Yeah.
It's like, even if maybe your anxiety is not as chronic as somebody else's, or maybe it could be resolved, or not resolved, but it could be managed in
Mhm.
non-medicated ways or different ways. It's like people like to turn towards the easy fix rather than connecting with themselves and their emotions and things like that. So that's
Yeah.
just the point that I wanted to make with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I just didn't want you to think that I was like, oh, I hate medication. I'm going to have an argument with
No,
Tom.
I mean, there's people who are very anti all medication and things like that. And, who am I to say? I'm not one to say because I've never been in their shoes. I don't know what it's like to have very, very severe chronic anxiety or depression where you can't get out of bed every day. So I'm not going to say that you shouldn't take medication just because I'm in a holistic field or something like that. I don't think there's, it's my place to judge them on that at all,
Got it.
so,
I've been in the same space, really,
yeah, yeah,
really in line with what you're saying because it's like it's been a fad for, I don't even know how many decades now. I mean, probably goes back to the 50s. Somebody's
mhm,
sad, they get some kind of pill for it.
mm, yeah. But yeah, going back to what you were saying, how, instead of just reacting to things,
Hmm.
you found ways to observe and to embrace rather than just react.
Yeah. And it's been really helpful to me. And it's really comforting just knowing that if something does come on that starts feeling overwhelming, just that whole, it seemed so simple to me when I was learning about it, but it means so much
Mm,
because I didn't realize how much in the back of my head was flying into overdrive because I was looking at these things as in a bad column and a good column.
mm,
So there would be other things that I researched or other therapists I talked to who were more of the mentality, well, there are things you can do to knock those things off the radar, replace them with things that are good. So you don't have to live a life filled with things that are bad. But if you take away the good and bad, kind of opens up a whole new world to how you manage things, because you're no longer fighting the monster, right? It's just sitting with the cartoon character.
Neutrality, right? I mean,
yeah,
not viewing things as good or bad. I mean, good or bad, that's just the label that we put on it.
Right.
The label that we put on it, either because that's how we're taught growing up, or from society, from our friends, family, all that kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's like you were saying with the diets too, you know, it's like, oh, well, you are supposed to look like this and you're supposed to have this energy level. So here's your prescription. You know, you have to eat these things and not eat these things.
Right. Good versus bad food, right? Absolutely.
Yeah. Talked about
like
the whole
broccoli is good and chocolate cake is bad, you know?
Exactly.
So never have chocolate cake. And that's where people get hung up. It's like you deprive yourself, or you use willpower, which is basically resistance, right? Instead of shifting yourself to a place where you want less and less of chocolate cake. I know I did a video on that a while ago about willpower, and like people who are trying the diet and things like that. And we've all done this, where it's just like, I can't have that. I can't have that. And you're resisting and you're resisting and resisting. And eventually you cave and you have it, because you can only resist for so long. It's like your body, right? It's pulling you back. But if you shift your mindset to a place where you want to eat healthier and you want less of that cake, right? You want to exercise. That's huge.
Absolutely.
That's where people are able to maintain themselves rather than always falling back or doing something for a little while and falling back into old habits, you know, like fad diets. That's why they're called fad diets. You know, they only last a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally see what you're saying. It's like, I kind of see it as, well, that's a person's natural way, right? They have natural wants. They sometimes want some sugar or some cake, potato chips or something. And you're taking that and you're looking at it as like a disease that needs to be cured.
Something's wrong with me. Yeah.
And then the go-to is, okay, well then I'm going to eliminate it and I'm going to live a nice, clean, healthy life. But it's just like you're saying, like you can coexist with the chocolate cake and the potato chips, and you can fill your life with exercise and vegetables and fruit too. There's nothing that needs to be gotten rid of. And I think people feel like when they're indulging in cake, or when they're kind of caught short by anxiety, it's like they failed. It's like a project that you're supposed to be getting this A+ on. And when you incorporate these things that people traditionally see as bad, it's like, oh, I failed now.
Yeah.
But it's just being a balanced person.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's powerful.
Well, it's really just me reiterating a bunch of what you said.
It's still powerful.
We see very much eye to eye on these things. And, you know, there'd be times when I've mentioned to you before, like when I'm going through like the tenets or the techniques of my therapy, it makes me think of you a lot, because I know that you're a big believer in inclusion, and everybody has different needs and wants and problems, and we need to expand to look more at what different people require to live a healthier life. It's not if A then B.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can't just fit everybody into one box.
Yeah.
Which I feel like society and, you know, media and things like that try to do. You know, but I'm not like you. You're not like me. You know, I'm not like my neighbor. So you know, we're all different. We have different needs. We experience things differently. We have different sensations that run through our body. So like how you experience anxiety might not be how I experience anxiety, you know, and so on. So yeah, I mean, that's so important. Just having giving it a holistic approach, because everybody's really, we're the same, yet we're not.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And after trying these other methods, it was like, well, you know, for me in particular, I feel like, I mean, at first I thought it was just my rapport with doctors, and I was like, I think I need something different. I need like a fresh perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ended up just getting into a whole different type of cognitive therapy, which has been working well. So,
Awesome. Cool.
yeah,
Awesome.
good
Great to
stuff.
hear. So yeah, thank you for sharing your story. Like that's amazing that you're able to you know, use that or you know, apply those methods and share them here. You know, is there anything else that you wanted to mention? You know, as far
No,
as
I think that was good. That I shared everything I had in mind. I think it was a great conversation. Thank you
yeah,
so much for having
absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Tara is one of my good friends here. He
me.
lives not too far away, but we're you know, quarantining still. So
Right. We'll see each other in person again soon enough.
we will indeed.
The
So
Zoom.
thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank you,
you.
Jen.
And thank you everybody who is watching.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
All
See
right.
you next time.
Peace.
Bye.